So on the top of Samach Tes Samad Aleph, the Gemara brought over here a brisa that says that the Kainim are not allowed to sleep in the big day kahuna. And the Gemara was medayik, that means that they're allowed to eat in them, or even they're allowed to walk in them. But the Gemara said, no, lav dafke. The main thing that the brisa is teaching me is what it says at the end of the brisa, that even though they're not allowed to sleep in them, but they could fold them and place it under their head. So I mentioned yesterday that it doesn't mean under their head, it means beside their head. The Gemara here itself says this right now. Let's see. So paishtin umekaplan umanicha neisan tachas rasheim. They can remove their garments, big kahuna, fold it, place it under their heads. Shamet mino. From this itself, you see that big kahuna nitnu lahanis ben. That you're allowed to have benefit from the big kahuna, even if they're not wearing it, but they're using it as a pillow. Amar Rav Papa, so Rav Papa says, loitay metachas rasheim. Don't read it. It doesn't literally mean that they're placing it under their heads as a pillow. All it means is they're placing it beside their head. Rav Misharshia said that shamet mina. From here we see similar by the tefillin. Tefillin minatzat shapedami. If a person is sleeping and he places the tefillin in his bed, beside his body, that's okay. Just like by the big day kahuna you're allowed to. The same thing also with the tefillin.
That's the same kedusha with the tefillin.
Apparently, it's similar. Yeah. Now the Gemara says, I'll prove to you that when it says over here in the Braisa, Tachas Rashayim, it can't be read literally under their head, but it means that they place the big kahuna beside their head. The Keneged Rashayim, that when it means beside their head, because if you're going to say that they literally are using it as a pillow, there's another problem here. We're discussing if they could have could you use the big kahuna even when it's not the time of the Aveda and so on. But there's another problem. Typically, mishum kalayim. Isn't there an issue of kalayim? The ha'ike avneit, you have the avneit, the gartel, which is made out of linen and wool, and it's kalayim. So how could they use the kalayim not during the time of the Aveda under their head if it's kalayim? So even if you're going to say that they could have a no from the big kahuna, but kalayim should still be an issue. So how could it be under the head? So it must be beside the head, like we said. The Gemara explains, it depends. Does everybody agree that the gartel of the kain hedyet was kalayim? So it would be understood according to the opinion, we had this a few times before, that avneta shel kain gadol, that the gartel of the kain gadol on Yom Kippur, the Bach here says b'yom kippurim, zehu avneta shel kain hedyet b'shar yemais hashana. That's where the Bach puts it in. That the gartel of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur is the same material as the gartel that the Kohen Hedyet wears every day of the year. So it's just linen. It's a white linen gartel. So then there's no kilayim here. So he can put his head on it. But the opinion that says that the gartel of the Kohen Gadol is not the same as the gartel of the Kohen Hedyet. The Kohen Gadol's gartel is pure linen. The Kohen Hedyet's gartel is linen and wool. It is kilayim. What are you going to say according to this opinion? How could he put his head on it as a pillow? Now, if you're going to want to answer and say, there's no issue of kilayim here. Why not? Kilayim b'levishe v'hala hu da'asar. Kilayim is only not allowed if you're getting dressed with it as a garment and you're placing it on top of your body to cover yourself. But ba'atzah shari. But to spread a sheet that's of kilayim and you lie on top of it and you're not placing it on top of yourself, that's allowed. So the Gemara says, no, it's still a problem. Because Vatanya, we learned in the Braisa, in the Torah it says regarding Kilayim, lo yala alecha, that you shouldn't place the garment of Kilayim on top of your body to cover yourself with it. Min ha-Torah, it's allowed to spread Kilayim on your bed and to lie in it. Aval, however, Omru Chachamim Oselas. The Chachamim said you're not allowed to do so. Shema Tichrech Nima Achas Al Besarei. Maybe there'll be one thread that will come on top of the flesh of your body and you'll be over the Isser. So Midrabanan, there's an Isser here. If so, even though Minat Torah, there's no issue of using it as a pillow because it's below you, it's not on top of you, but still Midrabanan, there's an Isser. So now the Gemara suggests another reason why kilayim here wouldn't be a problem. If you'll argue and say the mafsikle midi beini, that you're not putting your head directly onto the gartel, which is kilayim. You're making a separation. He has 4 garments, right? So you could put the gartel inside, and the other garments is what he puts his head on as a pillow. So that also won't work because V'amar Rab Shimon ben Pazi, Amar Rab Shua ben Levi, Amar Rebbe, Mishum Kahala Kadisha Shabir Shalayim. in the name of the holy congregation Yerushalayim, afila esem matzai zu agabi zu. Even if you have 10 blankets or 10 sheets, one on top of the other, the kilayim tachtein, and there's the kilayim at the bottom of them. Osir lishan aleya. You're not allowed to sleep on top of this. There's also an issue of kilayim. This is not an issue of kilayim in Atayra. It's only an issue of kilayim b'derabbanan. The same gzeira that we said before, that if you're going to lie on top of kilayim, we're afraid that one nima, one thread, might end up on top of your body. Chachamim made that gzeira even in a case where the kilayim is at the bottom of all the sheets. Nevertheless, you're not allowed to. So therefore, there's a problem here with the kayin putting his head on the kilayim. The Mefarshim asked the question, what's with the famous concept that we know, Ein Shvus B'Mikdash? There's no gzeiris mid'Rabbanan that apply in the Beis HaMikdash. So why are we applying to the gzeira of mid'Rabbanan of kilayim? So there's a few answers. One answer is that concept of Ein Shvus B'Mikdash is only regarding Isurim of Shabbos, the Malachas regarding Gzeiris on Shabbos, not beneged to other kinds of Shvusim. That's one opinion. So it's an interesting thing. It's not across the board that you say Ein Shvus B'Mikdash. Another answer is that the reason why we usually say Ein Shvus B'Mikdash is because Kayanim Zrizim Heim. Kayanim are very diligent and they're swift, they watch what they're doing. But if you're talking about while he's sleeping, and without his knowledge at all, a little thread might come on top of his body. It doesn't matter what kind of kain it is. It's something that could happen, and therefore such a kind of shvus applies even in the Beis HaMikdash. So the bottom line is,
Also, only because by the avodah is not
Ein Shvus B'Mikdash. That's another opinion. That's true. That's also an opinion during the avodah. Yeah, the Rebbe brings that in the Sikha. Correct. Okay. Either way, the point is that how could they sleep on top of these garments? So we come back to what we said. Elalav shma mino keneged rasheyan. This is the proof that they did not actually use it as a pillow, but they put it besides their head. Shma mino. This is a raya that who over here said this? Rav Papa. Now the Gemara brings another opinion that argues. Rav Ashi says lo'olam tachas rasheyan. Really, they did place the big dekona under their heads. V'ha kamisani miklayim. Even though the question was that they're having benefit from kilayim. The answer is it's not an issue because big day kohuna koshen hang, the garments of the kayanim are a more tough material, and therefore it's what? Stiff material, and therefore it's not something that is an issa klayim for. Ki hadam Ravuna bered Rav Yeshua, hai namta gamda. This felt that's tough, that's a stiff material, sharia. It's the narish from the city narish, sharia. It's allowed. Because the issa of klayim is only when it's something that you wear as a garment that's soft, not something which is stiff. And therefore the begadim of the kayanim was made in the very, very stiff, and therefore there's no issa of klayim b'chlal. Not even with the Rabbanon. Tashema. Now the Gemara comes back to the original question that we were discussing, is a kayan allowed to wear the big day kohuna even not at the time that he's doing the Aveda? So I'll bring you a rai for this. It says in the Braisa clearly, big day kohona yaitze ben lemedina osar. So the big day kohona of the kain gadol, if he's walking out with it into the country, he's not allowed. But if b'mikdash, inside the Beis HaMikdash, bein b'shas aveda, whether it's during the aveda, bein shaloi b'shas aveda, whether it's not during the aveda, mutter, it's allowed. V'pnei big day kohona nitnu lahanes behen, because the big day kohona you're allowed to have a na of it, and therefore the kain is allowed to walk with it. Whether it's during the Aveda, whether it's not during the Aveda. Shma mina, this is a raya to the question that we asked. However, Taisus over here points out that even in the Beis HaMikdash, when a kain is allowed to walk with the big dekona, even not during the Aveda, the reason is, Taisus says, because le'nitne teire l'malachi asharis. If you're going to tell a kain that he has to remove his big dekona the second he's done his Aveda, so it's very difficult. He can't even walk one step. The moment he's done his Aveda, boom, he has to take off his garments. So in the Beis HaMikdash, they allowed him after the Aveda to walk somewhere where he has to go and then take off the garments. But even in the Beis HaMikdash, for a kain to l'chatchila go ahead and put on the big dekona, if he's not planning on doing the Aveda, stam to put it on, that you're not allowed even in the Beis HaMikdash. That's what Taisus here says. So does that mean, like it says in this Braisa, that outside the Beis HaMikdash, out in the country, a kain is not allowed to wear the big day kohona? So the Gemara here brings a story where we see that that's not the case. But Tanya, we learned in the Braisa as follows: Be'esrim v'chamisha b'tevis, the 25th day of Tevis, Yoim Har Grizim Hu. It's a day which a miracle happened connected to Har Grizim, which the Gemara will explain. Har Grizim, it was the place where the Kutim lived. And they made a lot of trouble for Yidden, especially in the beginning of the second Beis HaMikdash. So this is a special day that a miracle happened, as the story will here be brought. The Loyle Mispid, it's a day that you should not do any eulogies. It's a Yom, this is the day, Shebikshu Kutiyim Es Beisa Lekenu, that they requested, they wanted that the house of the Eibishter, in other words the Beis HaMikdash, should be destroyed. Alexandros Moikdain la'achrivai. They asked Alexandros Moikdain to come and destroy the Beis HaMikdash. V'nosnai lahem, and Alexandros Moikdain gave them the permission to go ahead and destroy the Beis HaMikdash. So Bo, the Yidden came, Vaidu as Shimon HaTzadik, they come and notified Shimon HaTzadik about what's about to happen. That the Kutiyim, together with Alexandros Moikdain, are going to be coming to destroy the Beis HaMikdash. Ma asa, what did Shimon HaTzadik do? Lavash bigdei kohuna. He got dressed in the garments of the Kohen Gadol. V'nisatev b'bigdei kohuna. He wrapped himself in these bigdei kohuna. So the Mefarshim say it's sort of a double lashon. It says he dressed and he wrapped, meaning he didn't only physically put on the garments, but also all the kedusha of the garments. He put it on to walk out with this. Umiyekire Yisrael imay, and he took from the most prominent of Yidden with him, va'avukas shel orbi yedein, and they had torches of lights in their hands. V'chol halayla, and the entire night Shimon HaTzadik was marching out of the Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim towards the Kutim and Alexanders that were coming to the Yerushalayim. So the V'chol halayla, the entire night, halalo helchem mitzad zeh, v'halalo helchem mitzad zeh. The Shimon HaTzadik with the prominent people of the Yidden were marching in one direction, and the Kutim together with Alexandrians were coming and marching from the other direction. Until the morning star came up. As soon as it started getting light. So Alexander Moikdan said to the Kutiyim, Mi alalu, I see some people in the distance marching towards me. Who are they? Amrulai, they said to him, Yehudim shemardu bach, those are the Yidden that rebelled against you. Then when they came to this place, La Antipatris, Zorcha Chama, and then there was the Netzachama, the sun came up, Upagu Zebezeh, and finally they encountered one another. Kivin, Sheral, Shimon HaTzadik, as soon as Alexander Moikdan saw Shimon HaTzadik, Yorad Mimer Kafta, he went off of his carriage, Ve'ishtachav elefanav, and he bowed down in front of him. Amru Lois, so they said to him, the Kutiyim said to him, Melech Gadol Kameischa, such a great king like you, Yishtachav Yehudi Zeh, would bow down to a Yid like this. So he said to them, it's the picture of this individual that minatzechas lefanai, that is victorious, that brings the victories for me bebeis milchamti, by all the wars that I have. This is the person that helps me in all of my wars. So he said to them, Lama Bosan, why did you come? So now Shimon HaTzadik said to Alexander Moikdan, why are you coming here? Amru, so they said, Efsher, is it possible that this house that you daven, and that we daven, that is in it, that we daven in it for you, and for your kingdom, that it should not be destroyed? How is it possible that you're coming here to destroy the Beis HaMikdash? These people that are serving of a desire, that they will confuse you, and they will fool you and tell you to come and destroy the Beis HaMikdash. So Alexander Moikdan says to Shimon HaTzadik, Mi alalu, who are these people that you're referring to? That Amru Loi Kutiyim halalu, these Kutim right over here, Sha'imdim lefanecha, that are standing in front of you. So Alexander Moikdan said to Shimon HaTzadik, Harei hei mesurim b'yadechem, I give them over into your hands, do with them whatever you want. Miyad, immediately, nokvom b'kfeyem, they pierced their heels, their feet. V'tolom b'zinvei suseyem, and they hung them from their heels, from the tails of their horses. V'hayim megared en oisam, and they dragged them that way, ala kaitzim v'ala barkonim, on the thorns and thistles. Ad she'igiu lahar grizim, until they schlepped them that way, all the way back to the place where they lived, to Har Grizim. And then, when they arrived there to Har Grizim, Chorshu v'zoru karshinim, they plowed the whole place. In other words, they destroyed it. What they wanted to do to the Beis HaMikdash, they did to their territory. They plowed it, and v'zoru karshinim, they planted vetches there. And then on that day, this was the 25th day of Tevis, that they turned it into a Yontif. That's the story. Why does the Gemara bring this whole story here? What do we see here? Shimon HaTzadik walked out of the Beis HaMikdash to greet Alexander Moikdan wearing the Bigdei Kohona. So we see that you're allowed to wear the Bigdei Kahuna even outside the Beis HaMikdash. So the Gemara gives two answers. It wasn't clothing that was actually used for Bigdei Kahuna. These were clothing that could have been used for Bigdei Kahuna. They were the same material, the same garments like the Bigdei Kahuna, but they weren't actually the Bigdei Kahuna. Another answer, that this is something which is unique. When over here, there's something that he wanted to destroy the Beis HaMikdash, and he had to use the power and the holiness of the Bigdei Kahuna, so then it's allowed to even desecrate the halacha and Torah to be able to go and save the Beis HaMikdash. Dr. Gemara weiter, what did it say? The next thing in the Mishnah. Chazan HaKnesses, Neitel Sefer Torah v'chulu. The Chazan, which is the Shamish of the Shul and the Har HaBayis, he brings the Sefer Torah, he gives it to the Rosh HaKnesses, and then he gives it to the Zgan, and the Zgan gives it to the Kohen Gadol. Says the Gemara, what do I see from this? So Shmamina, see, it's proof from this. Chelken kavod letalmid b'makom harav. I can give honor to a student in the place of the teacher. I'm giving honor to the Rosh HaKnesses, to the Zgan, in the presence of the Kohen Gadol. Abaye says no. Kula mishum kvoide the Kohen Gadol he. The fact that they're giving it from one to another until they're passing it out eventually to the Kohen Gadol, it's all to demonstrate the honor of the Kohen Gadol himself, to show how high in rank he is and how many people below him there are until the Sefer Torah comes to him. The next thing it said in the Mishnah of the Kohen Gadol, Oymed, when they come and give him the Sefer Torah, he stands up to receive the Sefer Torah. Meklal shehu yoshev. So that means that up until this point he was sitting. How could that be? But v'anantnan, we learned in the Mishnah, it's actually not a Mishnah, therefore some Mefarshim say that you have to switch it to v'ha'amamar, that the master had said. Ein yeshiva ba'azara. You're not allowed to sit in the azara. As Rashi here brings all the psukim, it always says, Lamed l'sharis ha'imdim, you have to stand in the azara. Elo l'malcha beis David bulvat. The only one that's allowed to sit in the azara is the David HaMelech, or the kings that come from David HaMelech. Shenema vayavi HaMelech David vayesher l'fnei Hashem. So how could this king sit here in the, how could the Kohen Gadol, that is, sit in the azara? Answers the Gemara, Kedamar Rav Chisda be'ezras noshim. The place where they read the Sefer Torah on Yom Kippur is in the Ezras Noshim, which is not really part of the Azara itself. There you're allowed to sit. Hachanami, so just like Rav Chisda said, this point of Ezras Noshim in a different place, so over here as well, Be'ezras Noshim. He said that this took place in Ezras Noshim. Where is it that Rav Chisda said that it's in the Ezras Noshim regarding another point, and we're applying that here as well? Regarding this, Meisvei, the question was asked at Tanya, we learned in Abraisa, Heichen, Kairin, Boy. Where do you read the Sefer Torah on Hakel, when the Melech reads the Sefer Torah? So the Tanakama says, Ba'azara, it's read on the Azara. Rav Laza B'Yakev Vayme, B'Har HaBayis. It's read on the Har HaBayis, Shenem, the Pasuk says, Vayikra Boy Lefnei Harachayiv, in front of the open area, Arshel Lefnei Shar HaMayim, that's in front of the Shar HaMayim. In other words, outside the Azara, in front of the Shar HaMayim. So that's in the Har HaBayis. So, but the Tanakama is saying that it's read in the Azara. How is it read in the Azara? It says over there also that he would sit. So Rav Chisda says that was in the Ezras Noshim on Hakel, the king read the Sefer Torah in the Ezras Noshim. So here as well, the Kohen Gadol is reading the Sefer Torah on Yom Kippur in the Ezras Noshim. Now the Gemara brings another pasuk, since we quoted this pasuk here, that it says by Ezra, that's where it comes from. Vayikra boy lefnei rechoyvash lefnei shar hamayim refers to Ezra. So it brings another pasuk that what Ezra did when he came up to the second Beis HaMikdash. In that same capital there. Vayivarach Ezra Elikim HaGadol. And Ezra benched the Eibishter, and it refers to the Eibishter as Elikim HaGadol. My Gadol. What does the term Gadol mean? Amar Rav Yosef Amarav Shegidloi B'Shem HaMefeirish. That he made the Eibishter great by mentioning the Eibishter's name, the Shem HaMefeirish, the four letters of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. That's one pshat. Rav Gidl Amar, Rav Gidl said, Baruch Hashem Elokei Yisrael Min Ha'olam V'ad Ha'olam. Ezra is the one that instituted that, and it was on that day that he instituted that every bracha that said, it should be said, not just Baruch Atah Hashem, but Baruch Atah Hashem Elokei Yisrael Min Ha'olam V'ad Ha'olam. That's what Ezra instituted, and that's the greatness of the Eibishter. This is a Gemara in Brachis and in Tainis, and later they were misaka that you should not say Min Ha'olam V'ad Ha'olam, but that's what he instituted at that time. So Abaye said to Rav Dimi, how does Rav Gidl know to say the pshat that he says? Why didn't he agree to the original pshat that Shem HaGadol literally means the Eibishter's great name, like the first pshat? Amalei, so he says no. The reason why I didn't agree to the first pshat is because ein oimrim shema mefaydish begvulim. You're not allowed to mention the Eibish's name, the Yud Kei Vav Kei, in the borders outside the Beis Hamikdash. So the Gemara asks on that, is that true? V'loi? But V'aksiv, there's a pasuk that says, also about Ezra, Vayamed Ezra Seifal Migdal Eitz, and he stood up on this platform of wood, Asher Asu Ledova, that they made for this. V'amar Rav Gidl, and Rav Gidl said, what did he do there when he stood there? Shegidloi b'sheim ha-mefaydish, that he spoke about the greatness of the Eibishter, and he did use the Shem ha-mefaydish. So you see that this was even outside the Beis HaMikdash. So the Gemara answers, Hayra Shah Haysa. That was something that was just for that time. There was an exception that he did for that time. But usually you're not allowed to mention the Eibishter's name, the 4 letters, outside the Beis HaMikdash. Over there, weiter, it says, Benigeh to what was done there in the times of Ezra. So the pasuk says, Vayizaku al Hashem Elokim b'koil gadol, and they screamed out to the Eibishter with a loud voice. My Amor, what is it that they were screaming about? Amar Rav, Yitayim Rab Yechanan. So Rav, or in the name of Rab Yechanan, said they screamed as follows: Bei Bei. Bei Bei is like what we say today. Oy Vei. Hainu Hai the Achrvele Makdasha. This is the issue. This is the problem. What are they talking about? They're talking about the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah. Is the major problem that brought the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. V'kalya leheichle, and it burnt the heichel. The katlinu lekula tzadiki, and it brought the death of all the tzadikim. V'aglinu liyisrael ma'areyain, and this Avodah Zarah brought the Yidden to be exiled from Eretz Yisrael. V'adayim merakid beinon. And now they came to the second Beis HaMikdash, they said, this Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah is still dancing amongst us. Klum Yehavtilon. Why does the Eibishter give a person such a kind of Yetzer Hara? El lekabuli be'agre, for a person to have that test and to withstand it and to receive more schar, more reward for it. So they said, Lo iyo binon v'lo yagre bino. We don't want the test and we don't want the reward either. That's what Eden were crying to the Eibishter. Nafaluhu piska mirikiya. A note came down from heaven, Da'avakosav be emes, and it was written in it the word emes. And in other words, the Eibishter was agreeing to them. Rav Chanina, so Rav Chanina says, Shma Mina, from here we see, Chaysamay Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Emes. The seal of the Eibishter is Emes. So this was the seal that came down, that they knew that the Eibishter agrees. So Isiva B'Tainisa Tlosin Yaimin, they fasted for 30 days, V'Tlosa Lilvasa, and 30 nights. 3 days and 3 nights. Masru Na'alayu. And the Eibishter gave over the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah in their hands. How was this? What happened? Nafak Asa, so it came out Kiguria, like a cub, a young lion. The Nura of fire, Mibeis Kodesh Kadoshim, from the Kodesh Kadoshim. And Amaluhu Navi Yisrael. So the Navi that was with them told the Yidden, Hainu Yitzred Avedis Kechav. This lion is the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah. Shenema, we see in the pasuk it says, Vayomer, and the Navi said to them, Zoi Sarisha, this is the wicked one, this is the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah. Bahadi the Tafsualei, so when they grabbed hold of this Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah, Ishtamed binise bimazia, one hair of its hairs fell out. Veroma kala, and this lion raised its voice, it roared so loud, Vazal kale arba mea parsi, and the sound of this lion went 400 parsais. So Amru, they said, what should we do with this Avodah Zarah? What should we do with this lion? Heichi navid. Dilme chas v'shalom merachmi aleim mishamayah. We're going to leave it. The Eibishter it's going to scream and cry again. It's going to roar again, and the Eibishter is going to have rachmanis on it. After all, the Eibishter created this Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah for a purpose. So maybe the Eibishter will leave it in existence. Amalahu Navi, so the Navi told them, Shadyuhu b'dude the avra. Throw it into a pot that's made from lead. And cover it also with a lead cover. Why? The avra mishev shoev kola, because lead draws the voice in. It's going to block out its voice. Even if it's going to cry, you're not going to hear it. Shenem, the pasuk says, "Vayayme zoy sarisha," this wicked one, vayashlach eisal toicha efa. They threw it into a pot that was the size of an efa. Vayashlach es even oiferes al pia, and then they threw a rack of lead on top of it to cover it. So that's what happened. That's how they got rid of the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah. Then Amru, they said, Hayil ve'eis ratzenus. Since we see that this is a time where the Eibishter accepted their tefillah and they were able to destroy this Yetzer Hara, Niboye rachma yitzred aveira. Let's ask of Hashem also to get rid of the Yetzer Hara of Aveira, which refers to the Avodah Zarah the Yetzer Hara of Gilead Arayis. Bayarachami, so they asked Rachmanas of the Eibishter, V'imsa biyadayu, and this malach, this Yetzer Hara, was given into their hands. Amalahu, so the Navi said to them, Chazu, you should see. Be careful what you do. Huh? The Yetzer Hara said to them, the ikat lisulei lahahu, if you're going to kill him, meaning himself, what's going to happen? Kalya alma, the world is going to be destroyed. As the Gemara will explain, if the Yetzer Hara of Gilead Arayis is gone, nobody's going to have any relations, and there will be no children, no piri v'ribya born. Chavshu tlasa yaime, so they didn't know what to do. They imprisoned him for 3 days. Ubaye beise bas yaime b'chol Eretz Yisrael v'lo yishtakach, and they went to see if anywhere in Eretz Yisrael there's even one egg that was laid in that time, and they didn't find even one egg. So in other words, when they imprisoned him, not only the taiva of arayis by human beings was removed, but the whole taiva even amongst animals was also gone. So now they said, Omre, Heichinavid, what should we do? Niktele, if we're going to kill him, Kal Yalma, the world will cease to exist. Nibaya Rachmi, Apalge, should we daven to the Eibishter that he should take away half of the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah, in other words, Gilead Arayis, only take away the immoral relationships, but he should allow the taiva for things that are allowed. Palge Berikia Yavi. Half, the Eibishter is not going to give. So what are we going to do? In the end, what they did was, Kachlinu le'enei v'shavku. They blinded him in his eyes and they let him go. So what was the benefit of this? V'ahani, it helped that a person does not have a taiva for arayis for his relatives. But the taiva of arayis b'chlal did remain in the world. That's the end of the story. Did everyone spoke about this Gemara here, this whole story about Barichas Gedela, the Verbringen of Tavshich Avdalad, Simchas Beis HaShe'eva. The Rebbe explained that the 3 Yetzer Haras that there are, there's the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah, then Avodah Zarah of Gilead Arayis, the Yetzer Hara of Gilead Arayis, and the Yetzer Hara of Shvichas Damim. They correspond to Chesed, Gevura, and Teferes, the 3 general kavim of the entire world. Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah is Keneged Teferes, the kavam Tzoi, the Amun and the Eibishter, which is the middle pillar that everything stands upon. Then there's the Yetzer Hara of Gilead Arayis, which is Chesed, a Hashpah that's not proper, and then the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah, which is the Yetzer Hara of Shvichas Damim, which is Gevura, which is on the left side. So therefore the Rebbe says, when it comes to the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah, so that's the middle pillar, that is the whole, everything stands on the Amunah. So over here, the Amunah, the Chachamim said, we have to get rid of Avodah Zarah. That middle pillar, the klippa does not belong over there, to disturb the Amunah of a Yid. When it comes to the other 2 kavin, Chesed and Gevura, so Chesed and Gevura, that's the place where, that's really the place of klippas. Gevura represents the harshness and the Helen Vehester. Over there, the Chachamim didn't even have a plan to try to get rid of it. The Gemara doesn't say here that they tried to get rid of the Yetzer Hara of Shvichas Damim, because that's the place of Gevuras. On the place of Chesed though, Chesed, that's a place where really Klippa doesn't belong. Chesed is Ashpa, Chesed is Kedusha. So when Klippa comes into the place of Chesed, that's not their natural place where they belong. So therefore, after they got rid of the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah, which goes against the Amunah V'Yid, that for sure they understood that we have to get rid of. They also said, we should go to the place of Chesed, which really also belongs to Kedusha. And the Yetzer Hara mixed into that place. Let's get rid of him over there as well. But they couldn't. They only got rid of him partially. Because Saf, both in Chesed and Gevura, there remains the Ashpa of Lo Mazeh. But in the center, in the most fundamental thing, in the Amunah V'Yid, there they got rid of the Yetzer Hara. And the Rebbe points out that once they got rid of the Yetzer Hara against Avodah Zarah, that actually weakens the Yetzer Hara in all areas. Based on what the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, that every Aveda comes of a lack of Amunah. That a person thinks that Oidena b'yadusai, and it's really a lack of Amunah that brings a Yid to Aveda. So by getting rid of this one Yetzer Hara, it schwachs up the Yetzer Hara in general. Sagt the Gemara weiter b'Marave Masno, in Marave Masno Hoche, they learned as follows. Going back to what it said before, that Vayivarach Ezra Hashem Elikim HaGodl. Rav Gidl Omar, that Rav Gidl said that Godel, what does it mean? Shegidla Mishem HaMefeirish. Like we said before, that he made the Eibishter great with the Shem HaMefeirish. But Rav Masna Omar, but Rav Masna said, what does it mean he made the Eibishter great? That he said the following praises: HaKeil, HaGodel, HaGiber, VaHanoira. He referred to the Eibishter as the great one, as the mighty one, and as the awesome one. So what's the chiddush here? So the Gemara says, what Rav Masna says, Matye Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. It brings us to what Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said. It proves what Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said as follows: Lama Nikra Shman Anshek Neses Agdela. Why are the Chachamim in the beginning of this, in the time of the second Beis Hamikdash, why are they referred to as the Anshe Knesset Agdela? Shechziru Atara Leyeshna. They brought the original crown of the greatness of the Eibishter back to where it was before. And the Gemara explains, Asa Moshe Amar, when Moshe came, how did he refer to the Eibishter? So he said, Hakel, Hagadol, Hagibor Va'anayra. That's what it says in Chumash Dvarim. Then Asa Yirmiyah, when Yirmiyah came, V'amar, what did he say? Nachrim, Mekarkerim, Be'echaloi. The Goyim are croaking in the Heichal of the Beis HaMikdash. They destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. Aye Neira Yisov. Where's the Eibishter's awesomeness? Sulayama Neira. He didn't use the term Neira. Then Asa Daniel, and Daniel came, Omar, and he said, Nachrim Mishtabrim Bebanav. The Goyim are subjugating the Eibishter's children. So Aye Gevur Yisov. Where's the Eibishter's might? Layama Gibor. He didn't refer to the Eibishter as a Gibor either. Asa Inu. So then came the Anshe Knesset Agdoila, and Va'omru, and they said, Adarabe, on the contrary, Zuhi Gvurasai. This is Gvuraisav. This is the Gvura of the Eibishter. Gvurasai Shekaive Shesitzrai. The Gvura of the Eibishter is that he conquers, so to speak, his inclination. How? Shenaisin Erachapayim L'Rishayim. That the Eibishter withholds his anger on the Rishayim. That's part of the Eibishter's might, that he allows this to happen for the Rishayim to come and destroy the Beis HaMikdash. And the Eiluhein Neira Isav. This is the awesomeness of the Eibishter. Shel Male Meirai Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If not for the greatness and the awesomeness of the Eibishter, Eich Uma Achas Yechaylu L'Eskayim Beina Umais. How could one small nation, the Yidden, survive amongst all the nations that are subjugating them? So Adarab, if you look at this itself, of the negative, of what happens, this itself, you see the awesomeness and the greatness and the might of the Eibishter. That's what Anshe Knesset Agdela were. So therefore, it was in that time that Ezra, by the beginning of the second Beis HaMikdash, that he came and he said, Akei lagad lagiba v'anayra, like Moshe Rabbeinu said. The Rabbanon, the Rabbanon, heichi avdi hachi, v'okri takante, the token Moshe. How could have they done before? In other words, the Rabbanon here refers to Yirmiyah and Daniel, before the Anshe Knesset Agdela came. How could they do something like this and uproot those titles that Moshe Rabbeinu gave the Eibishter? Gibor v'anayra. Omer Rabbi Lazar, so Rabbi Lazar said, Mitoich sheyedim ba'kadosh baruch hu sha'amitihu. Since they know that the Eibishter is truthful, that the Eibishter agrees to the truth, and he hates a fraud. Like Rashi says, Lefichach lekizbuvai. So therefore, they did not want to say something that they did not see openly how this is. So therefore, they could not say this expression of a gibor v'hanayra. Well, then the Anshe Knesset Agdela went a step further and showed and revealed the truth that no, if you look deeper into the Churban itself, you look deeper into the Galus itself, you will see the gibor hanayra. Sagt the Gemara weiter, the next thing that it said in the Mishnah was V'kaire achrei mois v'achbase. You read from the Torah, first from Parshas Achrei Mois, then you skip and you read from the Parshas Emor. So the Gemara asks, how could you do this? How could you skip? V'ramini, I'll ask you astire. It says medalgim b'navi. You're allowed to skip. When you're reading from the Navi, you can skip. But ve'im medalgim b'Torah. When you're reading in the Torah, you're not allowed to skip from one parsha to another. So the Gemara answers, lo kashya. It's not a question. When it says that you're not allowed to skip in the Torah, that's because when you're skipping long enough, you have to turn the pages of the Torah long enough that the Turguman, in those times they had an interpreter that would translate the words of Torah, so they'll have to wait, and even after the Turguman finishes translating, they'll have to wait. So for that we say you're not allowed to skip in Torah. Over here it says that you can skip from Achrei Mois until Emor. It's pretty short, and therefore it's not going to be a hefsek. When the Turguman finishes translating, you'll get up already to the place that you want to be. Rashi says that this is all for kavod hatzibur. It's for the honor of the people. You don't want them to have to wait. That's the reason why we always take out two Sefer Torahs when there's a time that you have to read, because in order not to have to roll the Sefer Torah, it's not kavod of the tzibur to wait. But the Gemara asks on this answer, we learned on this clearly that it says, medalgim b'navi ve'ein medalgim b'Torah. You're only allowed to skip when you're reading from the Navi. You're not allowed to skip when you're reading the Torah. And then it says, v'ad kama medalik, even in the Navi itself. How far could you skip? V'chdei shelo yafsek haTurguman. Only far enough that it won't be a break after the Turguman finishes in translating. So what do we see from this? Ha b'Torah, klal klal. If you're reading from the Torah, you're not allowed to skip at all, even if it's just so short that it's not going to be an interruption with the Turguman finishing to translate. Amar Abaye, so Abaye answers, lo kashi, it's not a question. We have to add another detail to this. The inyan kan binyan echad, Over here, it's talking about in one inyan. So if we're talking about in one inyan over here, like a Yom Kippur, right? We're skipping from Achrei Mais until Emor, and they're both talking about one inyan of Yom Kippur. So therefore, if it's short enough and there won't be a break after the Metorgim finishes, over here it's going to be allowed. And Kan b'shnei inyanim. When we said that we see from that Braisa that you're not allowed to skip at all, even if it's short enough, that's if you're going to skip in two different subjects. Over there we say that in Torah you're not allowed to skip at all. And the Gemara brings a ayat to this. V'hatani, we learned in the Braisa. Medalgim b'Torah b'inyan echad. You're allowed to skip in Torah if it's one subject. U'b'navi b'shnei inyanim. In Navi, you're allowed to skip even if it's from one subject to a different subject. And Kan v'Chan, both, whether it's Torah or Navi, b'chdei shelo yafsek ha-torgimen. You're only allowed to skip if it won't be a break after the Torgimen finishes translating. And then it says, v'ein medalgin min Navi l'Navi. You're never allowed to skip from one Navi to another Navi. U'b'navi shel shnei masar, Navi of shnei masar, those are 12 Nevi'im that are pretty short. Medalgin, you are allowed to skip from one to another. Ubulvad sheli yadalig misayfa sefer litchilasay. But when you're skipping, you're not allowed to skip going from later pasuk to an earlier pasuk. You're allowed to skip going forward, but not coming backwards.